Good evening and welcome to The Report with me, John Rees. Some 19 Kurdish protesters have now been killed in eastern Turkey. The demonstrators accused the Turkish government of failing to take action against Islamic State forces threatening the town of Kobani on the Turkish-Syrian border. Nathaniel Amos Sansom has this report.
Protests in eastern Turkey by Kurdish people turned violent last night, with at least 9 people confirmed dead. They were protesting against what they saw as the Turkish government's inaction on the conflict in Kobani, just over the border in northern Syria. Approximately 180,000 civilians, most of them Kurdish, have fled to Turkey in recent days to escape fighting. Protests were called by the Kurdish People's Democratic Party and have spread from eastern Turkey to the nation's capital. Visiting the border over the weekend, one member of parliament for the party called on the Turkish government and coalition powers to do more to help the situation across the border.
Tüm uluslararası güçleri, Türkiye demokrasi güçlerini, Türkiye hükümetini Kobane'de verilen bu mücadeleye destek sunmaya, Kobane halkının yanında olmaya davet ediyoruz.
Kobani, a mainly Kurdish town in northern Syria, has come under sustained attack in recent days by IS forces. The defending Kurdish fighters say that IS has taken control of many of the surrounding hills and is attacking them with heavy mortar fire. According to reports, 400 lives have so far been lost in the fighting. Tactical strikes on the town's outskirts by coalition jets have so far failed to alleviate the situation. The Turkish government has criticized the strikes and has refused to help the situation in Kobani militarily without a coordinated effort with other nations in the anti-IS coalition. Speaking to refugees in eastern Turkey yesterday, President Erdogan said that ground cooperation was the key, but that it may already be too late to save Kobani.
Havadan bombalamak suretiyle bu sorunlar çözülmez.
لا يمكن حل المشاكل من خلال القصف الجوي.
İşte bir IŞİD terör örgütü çıktı. Yerde, kara harekatında bu görevi ifa edenlerle işbirliği kurulmadıkça hava harekatıyla bu iş bitmez.
The Kurdish protests, meanwhile, have spread to the west, seeking to draw attention to the ongoing plight of the Kurdish community in Kobani, as well as elsewhere in northern Iraq and Syria. Protests were staged at the European Parliament yesterday and the Dutch Parliament on Monday night, calling for the West not to ignore the Kurdish people, still being attacked by IS.
We Kurds are frustrated that the international community doesn't take action against the massacre in Kobani in Kurdistan, the massacre of the ISIS terrorists against the Kurdish people, and that everybody looks away.
A similar protest took place at London's Heathrow Airport, organised by Kurdish protesters, who were calling on the British government to provide Kurdish fighters with arms, to fight the militants. The airport said that no disruption was caused by the protest, and that it respects their right to peaceful demonstration. The conflict with IS has raised deep tensions and divisions between the Kurdish people and the Turkish government, and as Turkey and the rest of the world waits to see the outcome in Kobani, the events of the last few days raise deep questions about how coalition forces can deal with this conflict. Nathaniel Amos Sansom, The Report.
Well, to discuss this, I'm joined by Muttalip, who's chairman of the Union of European Turkish Democrats, and on the line by Andrew Gardner, who's the Turkish researcher at Amnesty and based in Istanbul. Welcome to you both. Muttalip, this is going from an international crisis into a Turkish domestic crisis because the government refuses to act, isn't it?
We can't say that the government refused that. The Turkish government received nearly last 2 weeks 180,000 Kurdish refugees from Syria. This is a problem, a Syrian problem. And West simply wants to pull Turkey into the chaos in the Middle East, in Iraq and Syria. The Turkish governments refuse to do this, but they're doing all the humanitarian.
But the Turkish Parliament voted to be able to take action across the Syrian border. Why hasn't it?
That is the vote for when it's necessary. The Turkish forces defend themselves. But Turkish government is insisting last 2 years because of the Syrian problem, they should create a free zone, secure zone for the Syrian refugees. West simply ignored this plea from the Turkey. Now it's comes a situation, a fight going on the immediate border of the Turkey. Turkish government take that vote to any case to defend them, the country.
Okay.
But it's not going to invade another country. It wasn't for that.
Okay, Andrew Gardner, how do you read this? Is this now going to ricochet into Turkish politics? The leader of the Kurds, Abdullah Öcalan, is saying that it may result in the end of the peace process between the Kurds and the Turkish government.
I think there's two separate things which are going on. Both have very serious and important ramifications. One is that there's a humanitarian disaster on the Syrian side of the border. Turkey's been good to keep the border open, and as your guest said, perhaps up to 200,000 refugees have crossed from the Kobani area into Turkey. And it's very important that Turkey continues to keep this border open for everyone who wants to do so to flee to the safety of Turkey. On the other hand, these violent protests have been sparked by what they see as inaction by the Turkish government. Just recently, the Turkish Prime Minister, Ahmet Davutoğlu, has said that the government will do anything they can to stop Kobani falling because these people in Kobani are Turkey's brothers and sisters. But what we've also seen reported is political, game playing in the background, Turkey trying to get concessions from the YPG who are fighting the IS advance, to cut ties with the PKK, to, abandon the cantons in Syria. So really, what Turkey needs to do is not think about political games. It needs to do anything it can, anything within its power to ensure the safety of people on the Turkey side of the border and do whatever they can to help the people of Kobani as well. It's very likely that this will have long-term ramifications. And certainly what we've seen in the last few days with this violence leading to up to 19 deaths in Turkey is very worrying. The government needs to take steps immediately to calm tensions, to commit to investigations into these deaths and really sensible policing so these things don't escalate. Because if you look in Turkey's history, not so long ago during the 1990s, when you had attacks by non-state actors disappearing people, committing horrendous acts of torture, extrajudicial executions. This is something which Turkey has to take very seriously and take urgent steps to calm tensions now.
Just give us a moment. Let me ask Muttalip to respond to some of this. Just one issue at a time, if you like. Do you think it is the case, as Andrew was suggesting? That,
no,
just let me take the points that he made one by one. Do you think it is the case that the Turkish government is allowing the IS to put pressure on the Kurds, and that the Turkish government is using this to try and get concessions from them?
I completely disagree. Turkey is the victim of IS atrocities, same as the other people. We just recently managed to take 49 our hostages from them. They've been hostages nearly, 3 months, more than 3 months, and we just managed to take them to Turkey. And we are victims as well. All the atrocities committed on these deaths is the PKK-oriented people, supporters, killing Islamist Kurds. They're killing each other now because PKK supporters can't accept if anyone not sharing their worldview, they are not deserve to believe.
Aren't they right to be fighting the Islamic State?
No, they're not fighting the Islamic State. They're fighting the other Kurds in Turkey who have the Muslim appearance or the beard or the Muslim dress codes. They just burn 100 shops in one, because the shop owners has a Muslim appearance. Or they know.
Andrew, is that right?
Well, I think if you look at the statement of the governor of Diyarbakir, who's appointed by the Minister of the Interior, they say that there are deaths on both sides. There are 10 reported deaths now in Diyarbakir. Civil society and state sources put this at 5 people from groups who are from an Islamist orientation, and 5 for people who are supporters of the YPG. So that's the latest situation in Diyarbakir.
Okay. Muttalip, do you think? You say the Turks are victims of IS as well. Won't they become even greater victims of the Islamic State if Kobani falls?
We are already, the Turkish government already made clear that fallout of that war in Turkey is a great economic burden already in Turkey. But eventually, they want to pull the Turkey into that mess, the Syrian mess. So eventually, it will cost a lot of lives as well. So Turkey government protecting their citizen life, but paying for economically paying huge price for that, unfortunately. But no one appreciated the efforts of the Turkish government, what they're doing for humanitarian. 1.5 million Syrian in Turkey. They are all sheltered, paid, looked after in hospitals. And
do you think the West should help to pay for that?
Well, as a humanitarian, we treat them as a fellow Muslim brothers. They are in desperate now. We have means to support them. So people in Turkey is supporting them. But this can't be going on like that. And the United Nations take action. I mean, create some safer zone for these refugees, so they can feel safe, and so Turkey can help them in the other side of the border, in their own land. And now, situation is getting worse and worse. We don't know what will happen next day.
Andrew, Muttalip saying that there should be a kind of buffer zone created, and we've heard the Turkish government make this point. That seems to be something which is greeted with suspicion by the Kurds, that they see it as perhaps a Turkish invasion of Kurdish-held territory. How do you see it?
Well, I certainly agree that Turkey has done a lot to protect Syrian refugees in the country. 1.5 million Syrian refugees in Turkey, as we said before, and certainly Western governments, and of which Britain is certainly one, have to do a lot more to take responsibility for Syrian refugees in neighbouring states, including Turkey, and that should include financial investments and also resettling Syrian refugees to their own country. Certainly, the response of Western governments has been pitiful, and Turkey has largely borne the financial burden of refugees in the country. However, a buffer zone is not the answer. There have been countless examples, if we look back in time, at the safe havens and buffer zones not protecting those in need. It's vital that Turkey keeps its open border, lets Syrian refugees into the country, because this is the only way in which they can escape to safety, and the horrific abuses we've seen inflicted by the Islamic State in the last month in the Kobani areas is just one example, and it shows how vital it is that Turkey keeps its border open.
I mean, that's true, isn't it? I mean, we can think of other cases where safe havens just haven't worked in this kind of environment.
Well, it works during the Saddam era in the northern Iraq, protect the Kurds, air cover by the American and the British air forces. It worked and secured the zone for them, and they survived almost 10 years, 1990 until 2003.
But there are some counterexamples, for instance, in the Balkans.
Balkan is different, but this area is totally different because certain groups and they live in the certain areas, and I'm sure it will protect. But anyway, root of the problem is the administration of the Syrian government.
Okay.
I mean,
Andrew, one thing that President Erdogan said, many people will think is true, and in fact it's been repeated by figures from the British military establishment, that an air war won't change the situation on the ground.
I mean, the situation on the ground is horrific. When I was on the border 2 weeks ago, there were refugees coming from the Kobani area. They were talking about systematic killings, beheadings of civilians by forces from the so-called Islamic State. Urgent steps need to be taken to protect the civilians. I think that it's clear, after more than 3 years of this, one of the world's worst humanitarian disasters, a bombing campaign from the air certainly isn't the answer. But I think states have got to think more about helping people from a humanitarian perspective, and certainly more conflict and more war is certainly not the answer to that.
Okay, thank you very much. That's Andrew Gardner, and also my guest here in the studio, Muttalip Unluer. Thanks very much for contributing to that discussion. We're going for a short break now, but we'll be back for a news roundup and discussion on events in Kashmir. Do rejoin us.